So practice went pretty well today, so I'm just going to play through some of the things I've worked on. I'm going to start off with, this is Sonata number 4, and I would imagine it's French because of the composer's last name ending in ET, so I'd imagine it's pronounced Blavet, which is how ET is often pronounced in French, is with that AY sound in English. So it says Sonata number 4, and then I believe it's pronounced La Lumagne, but who knows, it might just be La Lumagne. I'm not quite sure what it means. I haven't done my due diligence to look at said definition. But there's let's see here, I think there's 4 or 5 movements to it. One of these days I'll learn how to count. Let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes. Yes, sonatas from the Baroque period actually tend to be different. A lot of people think sonata through different periods has different definitions. Sonata is a very generic term. All it means is a piece to be played. It's such a generic term. And then there was a generic term from singing. It was called cantata, and that was just a piece to be sung. So it doesn't really affect much of the structure. Now, there is such a thing as sonata form, where a lot of pieces stick to that sonata form, but that term itself is also sometimes called first movement form or sonata allegro form. And just because that's commonly used doesn't mean that all sonatas are that way. Sonata really is just a very generic term. It's like the modern, it's like the old version of like track 1, track 2. It really has no association with you. It's maybe a little more specific, but really it's just very generic. But I'm gonna play through this, and if I like it, I might go through and play the bass line on bassoon and download the acapella app and upload a video of that. I'm not sure if there's any recordings of this piece out there, but they're pretty nice Baroque pieces, and they're certainly something different than what you usually hear like Telemann and Bach, and etc. etc. And I'm sight reading these, so I might leave the metronome on. For the first movement, it's a slow movement, so I'm not going to do that. But I will leave the tuner on just to give you some entertainment, I guess. So that's the first movement. It's pretty nice. There was a part where I fudged some of the notes, so if you're like listening to this for 100% note accuracy, I don't remember exactly where, but there were occasionally missed notes. So if you're listening to this like practice with, just know that that is not 100% correct. Cool. So let's do the second movement. This is the Allemande. Often in these Baroque suites, the movements are named after specific types of dances, which are often, well, not even often, usually precursors to modern dances like waltzes and things of that nature. I'm not a dancer. Go ask a dancer. So this has 100. So let's see here. So I'm just gonna do my best to keep going. It's not gonna be perfect, but I'm just gonna do my best to keep going. And I think I'll do the first repeat, but I won't do the second repeat. That's a pretty fun one. There's tricky stuff in it, and certainly I'm not doing the greatest job of carrying through accidentals and stuff, but that's a pretty fun one. Let's go on to the next one. This one is dotted cornet 16. Yeah. So that's a nice one too, and you can kind of hear that has that precursor to the waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, right? So this says eighth note was 184. it's really fun. I like how the one goes. And certainly, obviously maybe not the best performance of it, but it's just sight reading, so, what you gonna do? Cool. So let's go on to the last movement. So this is a vivace. Allegro means lively, and vivace meaning fast, so lively and fast. So this metronome is slower, but this one should actually feel a little faster than the Presto because it's the quarter note equals 144, not the eighth note. But yeah, let's go through this one. I think I'll do their first repeat, but probably not the second one, just kind of how I've been doing. I like this one. I think I'll maybe not now, but I think I'll certainly keep it in my mind to really clean up and make a nice performance of. I think I might do it on piccolo because piccolo has that airier flute quality to it, so I think that would be more reminiscent of those old wooden flutes, how they have that kind of airier quality to it. I think that would really add a lot to the style of it too. And it certainly doesn't go like crazy high or anything, which is nice on piccolo when you don't have to play unreasonably high. Even though it can, that's not always the best thing to do, composers. Cool. Let's go on. Okay, so I'm going to do the Etude, and then I'm going to kind of go through the French piece. So this Etude is an E flat. Which is like so nice because E flat is so much more of a common key. Only 3 flats to manage, so even statistically it's less accidental to think about, so that should be easier, and it's less likely to see double sharps or double flats as well. Not that composers don't do stuff like that, but it should be less likely. Yeah, I'm just gonna start from the beginning. Let's leave the tuner on the screen. I think it's kind of nice to watch back in the playback, be like, oh, that note was in tune. Oh, that note was like really out of tune. So I can kind of work on those intonation tendencies afterwards as well. Just kind of as well as fine for sight reading. I feel like I'd maybe speed up the tempo a little bit, which is, it's really easy to speed up tempo in rest in particular, so generally it's the places where you don't expect to speed up that speeding up occurs. So I'll have to listen to that. But yeah, I think it was fine. Just for sight reading, you know. What you gonna do? You know, the best way to get better at sight reading is just to do it and keep going, and the best thing you can do when you're sight reading is just not stop. What page are you on? There you go. So for time's sake, I'm gonna skip the first movement, although I do, well, you know, I'm gonna play the last line of it, because I feel like I have that high really well. So yeah, I feel like I just have so much more control of that high F now, even though the tuner is super picky about exact pitch. I just feel like the ending of that's going really well. So today I practiced at 140, 120, 100, 80, and then I bumped it all the way up to 170. And so I figured instead of trying to play through that 152 again, I'm just going to show you what it kind of sounds like going that crazy fast tempo of 170. Which is 18 clicks, 18 beats per minute faster. Yeah, and I mean the treble spots are just the usual treble spots. You know, hearing that sextuplet rhythm, 1 E and a folly, 1 E and a folly, 1 E, you know, 1 E and a 1 to 6. It's even certainly hard to verbalize. So you know, hearing that mentally is, I think, the biggest challenge for it to come off clean. And certainly, another thing about this tempo is, even though normally you'd have time to breathe, there's just nowhere to really breathe. So when I was practicing at this tempo too, sometimes I would just kind of stop, take a breath, and then restart, which I'm going to do now. Cool, so I'm going to restart at 80, just need to take a breath. So I feel pretty good about that. It's certainly maybe not 100% perfect, but it's also much faster than it needs to be, so it just makes me feel more comfortable. So then what I've been doing in my practice sessions is when those places are messier, I go and isolate, and I try to isolate by beat, or even sometimes half a beat depending, just to really clean things up. So kind of where those sextuplets start, I would go like... and just kind of clean things up just like that. I just find that practicing at such a faster tempo when I do go to 152, it just like, it feels, even though 152 is fast, it just feels like a relief. And so I think my goal for tomorrow would even be to actually practice it at 180, which is just such an unreasonable tempo for everyone involved. And so that way when I, you know, go to perform this at 152, it doesn't feel like this overwhelming thing that it has been in the past. But yeah, let's keep going. four measures are so hard. I don't know why. I think it just deals with the way it's articulated, even though they're technically eighth notes and should be easier to tongue. I don't know. My fingers don't want to sink up there. And certainly I'm really struggling still with anything that involves my right hand pinky. So that's just kind of all sorts of nonsense because there's a low C there. But so I'm going to go back, kind of try that again, kind of isolate it first, just like I did on the page before. Get my tongue in fast enough, which is it's so weird because they're just eighth notes, really. About the slurred groups of twos on 16th notes that just like boggles my mind. It should be easier because it's like I'm tonguing eighth notes, which at this tempo isn't that hard, right? So I guess it's just like a finger thing. I don't know. Like, really all right through here, I know, up until that Allemande. There's no piano part, so in a live performance, I really could just slow down, you know, it really wouldn't be a big deal to... Because I can just cue the pianist at the Allemande, it's going to sound fine, it kind of sounds musical, but it's like I've said, like, if I change it like that, I want to change it like that because I think that sounds better, not because I can't do technically the way that's written perfectly. So yeah, I'm just going to keep working on it. I think I'm going to try it one more time. Let's get that metronome going again. my tongue's getting tired. It's not doing what I want it to. So I'm just going to keep hashing out, going on faster, and isolating. You know, sometimes in context it's very messy, but going back and isolating just kind of how I was before, just doing eighth note beats, quarter note beats, into that next beat, into that next phrase. It just really seems to be helping. Yeah, you know, things like that seem to really help. And so even though, you know, in the grand scheme of context in the thing, you're not necessarily seeing me go back and isolate things like I am. I'm just trying to do rush for brevity of this video, and this video is already a half hour long, so I'm gonna let you go, but thanks for joining me.